Some massive jungle changes are headed to live in 11.10, along with much needed nerfs to Jinx and Thresh. Unfortunately, there's Yuumi buffs though, so you can't win them all. In order to bring you up to speed, we brought together our challenger players and have analyzed the most recent data so that you guys can get the best read on the meta. With all these crazy jungle changes hitting this patch, what are your thoughts on Riot making jungle more noob friendly? For example, Comeback Experience is being reintroduced. Comeback XP has always been a very controversial feature. In the past, we've seen these spam ganking junglers thrive when Ketchup XP is in the game, since they don't need to worry about falling down a few camps. It also makes obtaining an early lead a lot less meaningful. If the enemy is a scaling jungler, they can make many mistakes early on, but it may not matter if they catch back up and become more useful as the game progresses. Anyways, chime in down below as we'd love to hear what everyone has to say. For all your educational content needs, there's no better place to be. Rumor has it, if you smash the subscribe button, your account will be gifted with some extra LP. So with all that being said, let's get right into it. Jungle timers and camp gold are being changed as the respawn timers are going from 2 minutes up to 2 minutes and 15 seconds. To compensate for the income lost by the spawn timer changes, Mini Krug gold will be increased from 12 up to 13, Wolf will be going from 55 to 65, Gromp from 85 to 90, and Raptor from 35 to 45. These extra 15 seconds will open things up for aggressive early game junglers to make an impact on the map without being punished as hard. As for the Comeback XP changes, large monsters will now grant you 50 experience per level below the average level of the game -1. This will allow junglers with weaker clears or champions who want to spam gank a ton to become a little stronger. Smite will see some massive buffs as the base damage will be increased from 390 up to 450. Instead of scaling up to 1000 based on level, you will now receive a 900 damage smite after your smite quest completion. This will make securing objectives so much easier for junglers and really limit the ability for Dragon and Baron to be stolen. Smite will now also break Scuttlecrab's shield, which makes junglers who lack crowd control so much more viable. The Omnivamp on jungle items will be reduced from 10 down to 8%. However, Smite % max health healing is going up from 10 to 15%. This is a pretty big win for junglers as it should be neutral in regards to the healthiness of their clears, but very positive when skirmishing around early scuttles. There's so many scenarios where smiting camp during a skirmish is the sole reason for winning out, so this extra health back from Smite is huge. Every single camp is receiving a nerf to its base attack damage. This will make clearing so much easier now and allow more champions to be played in the jungle. It kinda sucks for higher level of play though, as kiting camps and preserving your HP won't be as necessary, which limits skill expression. Instead of wasting your time and talking through every single change, we will have them up on the screen here if you want to pause and see the exact details. To offset the 60 extra damage being added to Smite early on, each large monster will see a health increase. They'll actually only be increased by 50 health though, so your clear becomes slightly faster if you're using Smite to clear large monsters. Overall, these jungle changes should lead to more diversity in regards to champions played, and will make jungling much easier to grasp, which can be a good thing for newer players, but a frustrating change to experienced junglers. The jungle diff won't be as prominent in 11.10 when the losing jungler can just farm his Ketchup XP and get right back in the game. Now let's move on to the item and rune changes and discuss which champions will feel the biggest effects. Phase Rush cooldown will be increased from 15 seconds up to 30, scaling to 10 seconds. This was a much needed change as the window to punish Phase Rush users was almost non-existent when the cooldown was only 15 seconds. The move speed for ranged is being reduced from 25 scaling to 40 down to 15 scaling to 40%. For melee champs, move speed drops from 40 scaling to 60 down to 30 scaling to 60%. These changes will definitely make ranged champs who run Phase Rush way more vulnerable in lane and give melee champions more opportunities to strike for trades. We could see Phase Rush pushed to the side in place of other alternatives depending on the matchup. Someone like Vlad, who can run both Phase Rush and Electrocute, will likely just side with Electro in most matchups now. Buffs to Riftmaker are set to drop as the passive will now stack when dealing or taking damage instead of only when dealing. The damage amp per stack will be increased from 2 up to 3%, but the max damage amp drops from 10 down to 9%. These are huge changes overall, as you'll stack Riftmaker almost instantly in a fight now, and even though the max amp is down by 1%, this is a net buff to Riftmaker for most champs. Remember, once maxed out on stacks, you convert 100% of the bonus damage into true damage, so overall, any Riftmaker user will see a nice boost in power for 11.10. Some pretty big buffs to Abyssal Mask are on the way, with the health increased from 350 to 400, damage potency up from 10 to 15%, and the damage amp duration going from 4 to 5 seconds. A few tanks like Ornn and Cho'Gath will really like these changes, and considering they're both S-tier champions already, they'll be pretty scary against heavy AP compositions for 11.10. Mask is already bought quite frequently on Ornn, as it fits in great as a second item, so watch out for the Forge God this patch. A very simple buff to Rageblade hits the Rift in 11.10, as the cost will be reduced from 2,800 down to 2,600 gold. Considering Vayne and Kog are already in great spots, we expect them to rise even further this patch. Senna will see a nice increase in strength for support and ADC, which is a bit worrying as she's already an OP support pick in 11.9. Most E players these days shy away from the Rageblade build, but we could see it come back now with this buff. And the final item change is a very small buff to Gore Drinker. The active heal is being changed from 25% AD plus 8% missing health to now 15% AD plus 10% missing health. All in all, the heal becomes ever so slightly stronger, but won't have a crazy effect on the champions who build it. And remember, if you want to improve fast and get the rank you've always wanted, then check out our hyper improvement system at skillcap.com. We have professional courses by the top players, Smurf commentaries where a challenger player walks you through how to climb out of every rank from iron to diamond, and we upload tons of new exclusive guides to our website each week. In fact, we're so confident you'll improve using our system that if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using skill caps, you can claim a full refund, so there's no risk. What are you waiting for? Check out skillcap.com and get the rank you've always wanted. Link in the description below. Moving on to the top lane changes, Riot has finally circled back to Darius and are issuing a pretty good nerf for 11.10. Darius E cooldown will be increased from 24 scaling to 12 seconds up to 26 scaling to 18 seconds. The nerf isn't too crazy early on, but will hurt Darius' team fight power in the mid game. The fact his early game really won't be hit too bad leads us to believe Darius will remain a top carry pick this patch. Darius will be on the fence between OP and S tier, but considering a pick like Shen was just buffed and is pretty insane, there will now be a decent gap between them, so Darius will be dropping into S. One champion I haven't seen in solo queue for months now is Kennen, so it's not much of a surprise he's seeing some buffs. W 4th auto magic damage is being increased from 10 scaling to 50 up to 20 scaling to 60. AP ratio will be pushed up by 5%, going from 20 to 25. We've had Kennen in A tier for the longest time now, and even with this buff, we can't see him jumping into S. A tier is where Kennen resides for 11.10. Once the most broken top laner in preseason, Kayle has really fallen off the rails over the past few months, so Riot is issuing a couple buffs. Level 11 Aflame damage ratio will be increased from 20 up to 25%. At level 16, the additional range is being increased from 50 up to 100. These changes make Kayle's scaling power even more insane, and we can see her having a lot more success, especially in the lower elos. Previously placed in B tier, Kayle will now shift up to A. Alright, so breaking down the top lane tier list, our analysts have Shen, Wukong, and Urgot as the most broken picks of the patch. Shen especially is just nuts now after the buff he received last patch, so jump all over the freelo while you can. Like we mentioned when covering the Abyssal Mask changes, keep an eye out for Ornn in 11.10. Those Abyssal buffs are huge for him, and he's been creeping close to an OP tier position in previous patches, so we may be looking to bump him up very soon. Our top 3 low elo picks of the patch include Shen, Garen, and Urgot, while the best bans are Darius, Shen, and Urgot. For the first patch in ages, we actually don't have any direct changes to junglers, but considering we're getting the system changes to the jungle, it's understandable. We'll have a much better idea of how those jungle changes affect certain champions as the patch progresses, so we won't be making any crazy adjustments to our pre-patch tier list. Morgana, Shaco, Xin Zhao, and Elise are each locking down a position in the OP tier. With the jungle changes, we expect these spam gankers like Elise, Xin, and Shaco to become even better. Diana, Morgana, and Fiddlesticks are the top 3 picks to climb low elo the fastest, while Shaco, Morgana, and Diana are great to add to your ban list. A mid laner we've had in the OP tier for such a long time now is finally being hit with a nerf. Galio will have his W cooldown increased from 18 scaling to 16 seconds to a flat 18 at all ranks. W magic damage shield will be lowered from 8 scaling to 20% max health down to 8 scaling to 15%. A 2-second nerf on such an impactful spell will hurt Galio a considerable amount. He'll now become more vulnerable into AP champs as well, which makes him less of a hard counter. Overall, Galio will still remain a great solo queue mid laner, however, his time in OP tier has now expired. We will be dropping Galio down into S for 11.10. Another mid laner nerfed this patch is Talon, as his Q bonus attack damage ratio is going from 110 down to 100%. Although this change puts a dent in Talon's scaling, that's not really where he thrives, as you pick him for his early game snowball power. Since it's only the bonus AD ratio that was nerfed, Talon's early game is left relatively unscathed. For this reason, we won't be dropping Talon down the tier list as he will remain in S. A 5 move speed nerf is set to hit Katarina, which seems pretty negligible on paper, but move speed nerfs are always more impactful than people think. Katarina players love to AFK roam, so this hinders their ability to rotate down bot lane on cleanup duty. Move speed is such a key stat as well, since it literally impacts you throughout every second of the game. This change will hurt Katarina a solid amount, but considering her state in 11.9, we won't be dropping her out of S tier just yet. So, having a look at our complete mid lane tier list, with Galio dropping out of OP, we have moved Zed up to join Rumble. Sylas and Kassadin are back in S tier as they made a strange disappearing act in our previous mid-patch update, so thanks to those who pointed that out. No massive changes to mid this patch, so we see the tier list with little to no movement. Our 3 hard carry low elo picks for 11.10 are Diana, Malzahar, and Annie. Zed, Yone, and Vlad are high priority bans as they are played a ton and are very strong in the meta. Jinx will become a little more vulnerable for 11.10, with her base armor being reduced from 28 down to 26. Sniping that game-winning Baron will also become much more difficult, as Jinx R execute damage will now be capped at 800. Both these changes will do a great job at bringing Jinx in line with the rest of the S-tier ADCs. We still think Jinx remains a small cut above everyone else. However, there will now be so many great ADCs around the same power level for solo queue. So, for the ADC tier list, like we mentioned, we have Jinx as the only OP pick. Keep an eye out for Kog'Maw and Vayne to really take over in 11.10. Both have been very strong S tier picks in 11.9, and with the Rageblade buffs, they'll only become scarier. The fact Lulu won't be nerfed in 11.10 either means most hyperscaling ADCs are going to be loving this patch. 3 ADCs we would highly recommend for the lower ranks are Veigar, Sivir, and Miss Fortune. Vayne, Jinx, and Tristana will be the highest value bans. After a few patches of pretty light work on support, we have 5 support changes in 11.10. Lux is first in line for a buff as her E damage is being increased from 60 scaling to 240 up to 60 scaling to 260. AP ratio is receiving a small buff too, going from 60 up to 65%. Great buff overall, considering E is the spell you max out first, so that 200 extra damage will become accessible at level 9, which is key for supports who receive less experience. We've had Lux as a B tier support over the past few months now, but this change will be enough to propel her into A. One of the more forgotten supports in Season 11, being Zyra, will now receive a few small buffs. Passive slow is increased from 25 up to 30%, and W cooldown will be decreased from 20 scaling to 12 seconds down to 18 scaling to 10 seconds. With how strong enchanters are right now with Shurelya's along with broken picks like Thresh and Leona, it's still going to be hard for Zyra to find a place in the meta. In the low elos, we see Zyra as an S tier support now, but mid to high elo, we can't see her pushing past B tier, so we meet in the middle and place her in A. The buff I'm least excited for in 11.10 is going the way of Yuumi, as her Q base damage is being increased from 40 scaling to 190 up to 50 scaling to 200. Empowered Q will be increased from 45 scaling to 245 up to 60 scaling to 260. If players just built Shurelya's on Yuumi, she wouldn't even be all that bad right now. Yuumis who build Shurelya's win 53% of the time compared to Moonstone users at 49%. This buff, combined with the fact Yuumi's actually pretty strong if you build her correctly, will push the annoying cat up from B into A tier. Another deserved nerf to Thresh is headed to live, with his base health going from 561 down to 530. Health per level will get a little compensation buff, going from 93 to 95. However, this still ends up a net nerf. It wouldn't be until level 16 where the health per level change would outweigh the base health nerf, and that's just impractical in almost every game as a support. 30 health early on is a solid nerf, so this will be the change that drops Thresh from OP down to S. And the last change of the patch is going to Bard, with his passive damage decreased from 40 down to 30. A pretty massive nerf considering you can proc passive multiple times in a row once you collect enough chimes. Bard passive is where a large majority of his damage comes from, so this nerf will be felt. As a result, we'll be moving the Wandering Caretaker from S tier into A tier. Alright, and now to break down the support tier list, Senna, Leona, and Lulu will be the 3 most OP picks of the patch. We covered Galio when running down the mid lane changes, but he'll see movement on the support list as well, dropping from S into A tier. If there's one support you have to watch out for this patch, it would be Senna. Rageblade buffs will make the offensive build even stronger, and since she's already a top support, we expect Senna's play rate to skyrocket. The best low elo picks our analysts would recommend include Brand, Leona, and Zyra. A couple of champs worth using your ban on are Leona, Thresh, and Lulu. And remember, if you want to improve fast and get the rank you've always wanted, then check out skillcap.com, link in the description below. With that said, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Good luck out there in 11.10, and we'll see you back here soon.